Hello again. Here we are still in Chapter 9, looking at the 8 different methods we can improve and strengthen the persuasiveness of our presentations. So we're on to number 4 now. I might have covered this, but it's evidence and proof that we can use these kinds of items that will increase persuasiveness, things like narratives, personal anecdotes, statistics, quotations, testimonials, graphs, and charts, as well as physical evidence. We talk about the smoking gun literally or physically, bullet casings, Bigfoot footprints if you're trying to persuade your audience that Bigfoot does indeed exist. And they say in the textbook that evidence is almost always persuasive, that it's better to have it in. However, they say that it has to be relevant. If you're trying to establish that these footprints prove the existence of Bigfoot, cat footprints, dog footprints, horse footprints really are irrelevant and don't add anything. They might even take away, because they're saying, what is he trying to accomplish here? But a Bigfoot footprint would be right on the money. And it says that that this kind of evidence or proof increases the speaker's credibility, and that people are confident that you know what you're talking about, you have your evidence, you've done your homework. However, they say for a highly credible expert of experts, they probably can only go so high in terms of their credibility, that they may not even need that if they are the expert of experts. They also make 2 comments about quantity and quality, that high quality evidence may increase central processing, and the quantity of evidence may serve as a peripheral cue. So if you have a lot of evidence, that again goes to that peripheral side, but the quality promotes the central processing side. And evidence is most efficient, it says, when the audience has a high level of involvement, that they're thinking, evaluating, and critiquing. Now then they offer and discuss 2 different, the narrative versus statistical evidence. And so on the one hand, narratives is storytelling and trying to share your experiences or the experiences of others. And they make the point that people are by nature storytellers and story listeners. People love hearing stories. But at the same time, they say that, and this is a kind of a quote, anecdotal evidence is subject to the hasty generalization. So you have to be aware that it can only go so far. That hasty generalization is that when you tell a story, it doesn't give as many facts, and so it can only go so far as strength of evidence. And on the other side, there are statistics. And while on the one hand, people don't often trust statistics, because we all know that you can make statistics pretty much say anything you want depending on how they are presented. Yet at the same time, meta-analysis shows statistics are more effective than narratives. So make sure that if you use statistics, they are clear. You've pointed out what they're trying to accomplish. Maybe why not do both? Statistics as well as narratives. Tell stories, but also back it up with numbers, and they can complement each other. On the one hand, it's the hard facts of statistics and numbers, but at the same time, telling a story or giving an example or an illustration of what those numbers represent makes it warmer. One side for the head and one side for the heart. All right, number 5 is repetition and mere exposure. That is, can by just the number of times we repeat the same content and make the same point, reiterate it several times in our presentation, is that helpful or not helpful to be repetitive? Well, there's a theory called the mere exposure effect that says, and seems to have been proven, that by the fact of repeating something several times, it tends to grow on us, and it makes an impact because we've heard it several times before. I remember one episode of Seinfeld, if you're a Seinfeld fan. George Costanza's dating a woman or wants to date her, and at first she finds him annoying and irritating, doesn't like him, and then he throws out this line to her, kind of like a sing-song way of saying his name, but he'd go, Costanza, and it sticks with her, and he keeps repeating it when he sees her, and from the beginning time they were dating to later on, she kind of admits she kind of likes him, and how that song helped him become more likable because she's heard it so many times. But repeated exposure to a stimulus increases liking for the stimulus, and that would be an example of that. Repetition can increase awareness, learning, and retention. However, there is a point where it's too much, that we get annoyed with the repetition, we get bored with it, it can damage our credibility, so we have to figure out when is enough enough. Several times is good, but there is a point of too many times of repeating the same content to our audience. Number 6 is order effects. So if you have evidence that you're trying to present, trying to make a case, trying to offer persuasion, and you have maybe some of your arguments, some of your statements are strong evidence and heavy hitters, where others are not so strong and weaker, should you present your strong evidence first and lead off with that? Or do you lead off with your weaker evidence to put it in there but get it out of the way, and then finish with your strong evidence? Or maybe you put it in the middle. You have weaker evidence, then strong in the middle, and then weaker at the end. Well, they say this. If you lead off with your strong evidence, that's called anticlimax, that it's at the beginning, and things that are early on in a presentation, we tend to remember those things, following what I might call the law of primacy. We remember what we hear first. But then there is the climax order, where we save the best for last, the strongest for last, what they call climax order versus anticlimax, climax order. And we also remember, it's called the law of recency, we remember what we hear last. So either one of those may work for us. But what they say is, don't put your strongest evidence in the middle. Evidence shows, studies show, that putting your best material is better to be first or last, is better than putting it in the middle of your presentation. And they have some content that says that some people are remembering things that are early or later, but very few remember it in the middle. They have studies have shown, and experiments have shown, that if given a long list of words, kind of random words, we will tend to remember the ones at the beginning and the ones at the end, but we tend not to pull out and remember the words that are in the middle. So apply that to your the points that you are making.